Chapter 7. The Paladin's Challenge. Dawn rose slowly over the walls of Veletria, spreading its pale fingers of light across the land in quiet increments, chasing away the lingering gloom of night. A gentle mist curled softly about the base of the castle's towering fortifications, its ethereal presence reluctantly giving way beneath the steady climb of the sun. Sentinels standing guard along the parapets pulled their cloaks tighter against the cold bite of early morning, their gazes scanning the distant horizon out of habit, more routine than genuine expectation of trouble. But that quiet sense of routine was suddenly disrupted by the sharp call of a sentry's horn, its urgent notes piercing the peaceful stillness and shattering the morning calm. Guards stiffened at once, eyes narrowing, instantly alert, hands moving instinctively to their weapons. Knights rushed from the barracks toward their positions atop the battlements, armor clanking and swords clattering into readiness. The once sleepy courtyard sprang to urgent life, rapid footsteps echoing sharply as preparations were swiftly made for whatever approached. Althea, awake and restless since long before dawn, was immediately on her feet at the horn's first warning. Her heavy cloak swept around her slender form, billowing behind her as she hurried toward the stone steps leading to the battlements. She ascended swiftly, emerging onto the walls with calm authority despite the anxiety tightening in her chest. The knights and guards made way respectfully as she approached, each offering quick bows and hurried murmurs of greeting. Their eyes betrayed their anxiety, and yet each stood steadfast, determined to fulfill their duty. Althea's presence alone steadied them somewhat, her quiet strength bringing confidence even as the approaching threat drew nearer. She stepped to the parapet, squinting slightly against the pale morning light as she gazed outward. Far beyond the castle gates, a small but menacing force marched steadily toward Veletria. Their polished armor glinted coldly in the rising sun, crimson banners emblazoned with golden imperial symbols snapping sharply in the stiff breeze. They moved with disciplined arrogance, perfectly ordered, as if already certain of victory. At their head rode a figure unmistakably marked as their leader, a paladin, resplendent in gleaming armor intricately etched with imperial sigils. Althea's jaw tightened at the sight of him, immediately recognizing the imperial commander as Sir Arendor. She had heard of him, whispered tales and harsh truths about his ruthlessness, his uncompromising arrogance, and most troubling of all, his formidable skill with magic. Even from a distance, Arendor's posture spoke volumes, riding forward with supreme confidence. His horse moved proudly beneath him, its steps bold and assured, echoing its rider's arrogance. The banners behind him waved defiantly, snapping briskly as if challenging Veletria itself to resist. A knight beside Althea shifted uneasily, his armored gauntlet tightening around the hilt of his sword. "Paladin," he muttered grimly, clearly recognizing the danger that approached. The mere presence of such an elite warrior had already unsettled the defenders, whispers of anxiety spreading among them, though their courage remained resolute. Arendor drew closer, bringing his force to an abrupt halt a short distance from the gates, leaving them poised like predators observing potential prey. A tense silence fell over both armies, stretching heavily through the crisp morning air. Then, with deliberate care, the paladin lifted his helmeted head, eyes fixed directly upon Althea atop the walls. She could feel the intensity of his gaze, a tangible force heavy with disdain and superiority. "Veletria!" Arendor's voice rang out sharply, each word clear and commanding, effortlessly reaching every ear along the battlements. "Your defenses are futile, your position hopeless. I give you this one chance to surrender peacefully. Defy me and your walls will crumble beneath my wrath." Althea stood motionless, her heart quickening, yet outwardly she remained composed, unyielding. She drew in a slow breath, the morning air crisp in her lungs, calming the storm of emotions churning beneath the surface. She knew all too well the terrible power a paladin wielded, knew the risks, the potential devastation, and yet felt no hesitation, no urge to yield. She stepped forward calmly, standing fully visible upon the battlements, letting Arendor see clearly the steel in her posture, the fire in her eyes. "Veletria does not bow to threats or intimidation," she called back, her voice firm, unwavering. "Take your soldiers and leave, Paladin. You have no authority here, and you will find no surrender." Arendor's smile was cold, contemptuous, filled with cruel amusement. He held her gaze steadily, a silent challenge passing unspoken between them. His soldiers remained perfectly disciplined behind him, their silence eerie and unsettling, a clear reflection of their commander's icy resolve. "You stand defiant now," Arendor replied mockingly, raising his gauntleted hand slightly in a casual gesture of dismissal. "Yet soon you will beg for mercy at my feet." Althea's eyes narrowed, and she felt anger stir sharply in her chest at the paladin's arrogant words. She drew herself taller, determination flaring brightly within her heart. Around her the knights stood ready, their weapons at the ready, courage shining plainly in their eyes. They drew strength from her defiance, from her refusal to show fear. "You speak of mercy, but you know nothing of its meaning," Althea responded, her voice ringing clear and steady. "If you choose to challenge Veletria, Paladin, know that you challenge more than mere stone and steel. You challenge the hearts and wills of those who refuse your empire's chains." A faint smirk twisted Arendor's lips, amusement clearly tinged by irritation at her defiance. "We shall see soon enough," he retorted sharply. "Prepare yourselves, then, if you truly believe you can withstand what comes next." He lowered his arm and turned his horse abruptly, signaling sharply to his men. Althea watched intently as the Imperial force halted, their lines forming neatly into ranks, silently awaiting the Paladin's next command. The air felt charged, heavy with imminent violence, the quiet peace of the morning utterly forgotten. Althea breathed deeply, feeling a sudden surge of fierce, resolute determination welling within her. She stepped back slightly, sensing her people's eyes upon her, their confidence, their hopes resting upon her response. She offered them a firm nod, allowing her calm assurance to bolster their spirits. "Stand ready," she commanded softly, just loud enough for her nearby soldiers to hear. "Whatever comes next, we face it together." A tense silence settled over the battlements, broken only by the restless shifting of armored feet and the whispering rustle of cloaks caught in the chill breeze. Below, Sir Arendor spurred his mount forward, advancing alone toward the great iron gates of Veletria, his soldiers hanging back in disciplined formation. The paladin's horse trotted proudly, its hooves striking the cobbled road with a deliberate rhythm that echoed like distant drumbeats in the anxious silence. Arendor halted mere yards from the gates, tilting his head upward slowly to face the defenders standing rigid along the walls. He lifted his helm slightly, allowing the morning sun to illuminate his cold, arrogant features. His voice boomed powerfully, amplified by some subtle enchantment that resonated clearly through the entire castle. "Veletria, your resistance is admirable but ultimately futile," he called out, his tone dripping with mockery. "I grant you this one opportunity. Open your gates, lay down your arms, and I promise mercy. Resist, and I assure you there will be nothing left here but ashes and grief." Murmurs rippled softly among the defenders, a faint current of fear threading through their ranks. Yet none moved from their places, and none voiced their doubts. Althea stepped forward clearly into view once more, her expression calm, her posture unyielding. She raised her chin, meeting Arendor's gaze squarely, projecting a strength she hoped would steady the resolve of those around her. "We have heard your threats, Paladin!" she called down firmly, voice ringing defiantly against the cold stone walls. "And we reject them utterly. Take your promises of mercy and your false assurances, and leave while you still can." Arendor's lips curled into a cruel smile, amusement glittering maliciously in his eyes. Slowly, deliberately, he drew his greatsword. The blade gleamed wickedly, etched with glowing runes that danced and flickered with an inner magical light. Soldiers atop the walls shifted nervously, eyes widening as whispers spread quickly, recognizing the sheer destructive power the enchanted weapon represented. Althea's pulse quickened, but she forced her expression to remain impassive, even as cold dread clawed insistently at her heart. "Brave words," Arendor mocked loudly, holding his enchanted blade aloft, allowing its terrible beauty to be fully seen. But bravery without power is meaningless. He raised the sword high above his head, the runes along its length blazing suddenly, releasing waves of shimmering energy that rippled violently through the air. Althea barely had time to brace herself before Arendor brought the weapon down with savage force, unleashing a brilliant surge of magical energy directly at the castle's stone battlements. The magic struck with devastating force, erupting in a brilliant explosion of light and noise. Althea shielded her eyes instinctively, feeling the powerful tremors ripple beneath her feet. The battlements shook violently, stone cracking with sharp, deafening reports. Horrified cries erupted nearby as a portion of the wall collapsed under the assault, sending a group of soldiers tumbling helplessly downward. Their screams echoed painfully, abruptly silenced as their bodies struck the earth below. Althea stared, stunned momentarily into silence, heart clenching painfully at the brutal display. She forced herself to look away from the destruction, turning instead toward Arendor, who now gazed up at her with a cold, victorious smile. His eyes met hers, challenging her defiance with merciless confidence. "How many more must I strike down before your defiance crumbles?" Arendor called out, voice dripping contempt. "Every brick, every stone, every life. I will tear your castle apart piece by piece until you beg for mercy." Around her, soldiers shifted anxiously, fear flickering in their eyes, their resolve visibly shaken by the display of power. A few glanced uncertainly at Althea, silently questioning the wisdom of continuing their stand. Yet no one spoke. No one dared to voice their doubts openly, all eyes fixed desperately upon her, waiting for her response. Althea stood firm, her anger now a fierce, simmering flame within her chest. She felt her heart pound painfully, yet her voice emerged strong and steady, unwavering even in the face of Arendor's terrible display. "You believe power lies in destruction and fear," she retorted, her tone ringing defiantly through the tense silence. "But true strength is standing against oppression, even when faced with impossible odds. Veletria will never bow to you, not today nor ever." Arendor's expression twisted briefly in irritation, clearly unsettled by her refusal to yield. He turned slightly in his saddle, the runes on his blade still glowing dangerously. He stared at her for a long moment, calculating, before finally nodding curtly. "So be it," he replied coldly, his voice carrying a chilling finality. "You've chosen your fate, Lady Althea. I will take great pleasure in tearing down your castle stone by stone. I promise you by nightfall your courage will be replaced by despair." He wheeled his mount around sharply, signaling to his waiting soldiers who stood silently behind him, their faces masked by their helmets, their posture rigid and disciplined. Althea watched as Arendor moved back toward his men, her fingers tightening on the stone parapet, knuckles white with barely restrained fury. Around her, the defenders stirred anxiously, looking at each other in tense uncertainty. Yet, in their eyes, she saw not only fear, but determination, resolve hardening, as they realized their fate had been decided, and that their only path now lay in fierce defiance. Althea drew a deep, steadying breath, turning toward her knights and soldiers, voice firm yet gentle. "Let his threats make us stronger," she urged, raising her voice clearly. "Prepare yourselves and hold fast. Whatever Arendor brings next, we will meet it together and without fear." The soldiers nodded slowly, their courage solidifying beneath her determined gaze. Their posture straightened once more, confidence rekindled by her quiet yet unmistakable strength. Althea looked back toward Arendor's waiting troops, her expression hardening into a quiet resolve, her heart steeling itself for the inevitable confrontation to come. She knew this day would test them, perhaps beyond anything they had faced before, but she refused to show doubt. Whatever power Arendor possessed, whatever violence he might unleash, Althea knew she could not and would not surrender. The gates of Veletria would stand firm, defended not merely by walls and steel, but by the fierce spirit of those within, who would never yield to the Empire's cruel ambitions. Yet despite her outward composure, Althea felt the anxiety of her soldiers radiating in tense waves from all around her. Glances flickered toward her, silently questioning, uncertain whether mere courage could withstand the might of an imperial paladin. She knew instinctively that hesitation would lead to despair. Decisive action was required now more than ever. Without further delay, Althea stepped boldly forward onto the very edge of the battlements, standing openly visible to both friend and foe. The wind tugged insistently at her cloak, making it ripple behind her like a battle standard. Below, Sir Arendor watched her calmly, his expression amused yet coldly calculating. "Enough of this," Althea declared clearly, her voice ringing out with unmistakable authority. "If you truly believe your strength can conquer our walls, Paladin, then face me directly. Let your blades speak rather than your threats." An immediate hush settled over the defenders, startled faces turning toward her, wide eyes filled with disbelief and alarm. Beside her, one of her senior knights stepped urgently closer, his voice strained with worry as he spoke softly, quickly. "My lady, you cannot—" Althea turned sharply, silencing him with a glance, her eyes fierce yet kind. She understood their fear, their hesitation, Their loyalty was tempered by a genuine concern for her safety. Yet she also knew there was no other choice, not now, not with Arendor's power so openly displayed. If she hesitated, her people's courage would falter irreversibly. "I must," she said simply but firmly, her tone allowing no room for debate. Her gaze swept across the faces of the knights and soldiers arrayed along the walls, allowing them all to see clearly her conviction, her unyielding resolve. This battle has become more than mere siege warfare. If I don't face him openly, we risk losing the heart of our resistance. Trust me, as I trust each of you. A long, tense silence lingered, stretching out painfully. Slowly their shock gave way to awe, disbelief fading to admiration as they saw clearly the determination shining brightly in Althea's eyes. Nods of respect and acceptance followed, quiet murmurs of support rippling gently through their ranks. Pride ignited visibly within them, their resolve rekindling stronger than before. Althea turned again, facing outward toward Arendor, whose arrogant smile had now faded slightly, replaced by a flicker of genuine interest, perhaps even curiosity. His eyes narrowed thoughtfully, assessing her more carefully. She met his gaze unflinchingly, drawing in a slow, steady breath as she prepared herself for the revelation she had always guarded so closely. Closing her eyes briefly, she reached deep within, connecting to the power she had spent years training quietly in secret. Her pulse quickened, her heartbeat aligning suddenly with the faint whisper of magic flowing through her veins. Althea stepped deliberately off the battlements and onto the stairs descending to the gates below. Her soldiers parted respectfully, their eyes wide with anticipation and uncertainty, following her every movement. As she descended, her hands lifted slowly to her sides, fingers spread gently outward. With each step, pale gold light began to flicker softly around her fingertips, tendrils of radiant magic spiraling gently along her arms. It was subtle at first, almost imperceptible, yet as she moved steadily toward the gate, the light intensified, becoming undeniable, illuminating her form in a faint, ethereal glow. Gasps rose softly among the soldiers who watched her pass. Knights stared openly in amazement, recognizing instantly the rare and powerful magic that marked her unmistakably as a paladin, the female counterpart to the Empire's feared warriors. None had known this secret, and none had expected it from their gentle yet fierce leader. Awe and pride surged visibly within them, hearts quickening with newfound hope and resolve. At last, she reached the heavy gates, signaling for them to be opened. With a grinding sound, the gates slowly swung outward, revealing Arendor standing arrogantly before her, arms folded, observing her carefully. He studied the light dancing gently around her, the faintest trace of uncertainty shadowing his expression. Althea stepped boldly outside the gates, standing directly before him, the distance between them only a few yards now, their gazes locked fiercely. The air itself seemed to crackle and hum softly with latent energy, tension thickening almost tangibly between them. The golden aura around her strengthened, shimmering gently in clear defiance of Arendor's cold, oppressive presence. "Interesting?" Arendor finally murmured, a note of grudging respect mingling with arrogance. "I did not expect such hidden strength from Veletria's lady." Althea lifted her chin slightly, her posture straight and resolute. "Then you underestimate far too easily, Paladin. Your empire's cruelty and arrogance blinds you." Arendor smirked faintly, amusement returning swiftly to his cold features. Slowly, deliberately, he drew his greatsword once more, the runes etched into its blade igniting with a harsh, violent glow. "Perhaps, but it matters little now. One duel won't change the fate of your kingdom. Soon your people will kneel." Althea allowed the magic within her to strengthen further, drawing confidence from its comforting presence. Her hands tightened around her own weapon. A slender yet formidable blade she drew calmly from its sheath, the soft glow of her magic bathing its steel. "Your threats end here," she replied clearly, defiantly. "Today your arrogance meets its match." Arendor's expression hardened, irritation flickering visibly in his eyes. He raised his blade slowly, stance shifting into readiness, magic swirling around him in response. Althea mirrored him, her breathing steady, heart pounding fiercely but evenly within her chest. Around them, soldiers from both sides stood silently watching, fully aware this moment would be decisive. Althea felt her people's eyes upon her, their hopes, their trust. Everything now rested squarely on her shoulders. "Prepare yourself, lady," Arendor said, his voice cold and challenging. "This will not be gentle." Althea's eyes narrowed, her resolve steadying her heartbeat as she stepped forward boldly, ready to meet his challenge without fear. "Do not hold back, Paladin," she responded firmly, determination clear in every word. "I assure you I won't." A tense silence fell across the gathered soldiers, each side watching with breathless anticipation as the two paladins faced one another beneath the towering gates of Veletria. Arendor lifted his enchanted blade, its runes blazing fiercely as he lunged forward, his powerful movements radiating lethal confidence. Althea braced herself, her feet set firmly on the stone ground as she met his initial strike with a flash of her own magic-infused sword, the clash echoing sharply in the chilled morning air. The impact resonated deeply through Althea's arms, forcing her to summon every ounce of her hidden strength. She felt the tremendous force of Arendor's magic pressing against her own, an oppressive power driven by cruelty and contempt. Yet, as the paladin stepped back to prepare another strike, Althea recognized something else beneath his show of force: pride, dangerous and reckless. The duel erupted swiftly into a furious dance of blades and magic, each strike illuminating the battlefield with dazzling, crackling arcs of power. Arendor wielded his magic with practiced ease, unleashing blows that sent sparks showering wildly into the air. His every move meant to overwhelm, to dominate, to break her quickly. Yet Althea fought differently, precise and fluid, driven by a cold determination that sharpened each movement, carefully managing her energy and reading her opponent. Her magic responded intuitively, reacting to her intent rather than raw aggression. Each clash taught her something new, revealing openings in Arendor's seemingly perfect form, vulnerabilities hidden by his arrogance. Around them, the defenders watched breathlessly from the battlements, their earlier fear giving way to awe and fierce pride. For the first time, they truly saw their lady's power, a radiant strength they had never imagined possible. Their hearts swelled with renewed courage, cheering each deft strike she landed, every defensive stance that held firm against the paladin's brutal blows. Slowly, Arendor's confidence began to falter. His blows remained powerful yet increasingly wild, more reckless. Frustration flared dangerously in his eyes as he failed repeatedly to overpower her, his contempt replaced with angry disbelief. "Impossible!" he snarled, swinging his blade in a ferocious arc, magical fire erupting violently from its tip. "You are nothing, a mere woman hiding behind these weak walls." Althea sidestepped fluidly, the flames narrowly missing her. Calm now filled her every movement, clarity sharpening her vision and heightening her senses. She sensed precisely when and where his next blow would land, and moved swiftly to counter, her blade slicing upward in a brilliant flash of golden-white magic, striking at his side, leaving a smoking scar upon his enchanted armor. Arendor stumbled backward, visibly shaken, eyes widening in shocked fury. Althea pressed her advantage without hesitation, driving him backward steadily, each strike precise and relentless. The duel had shifted irrevocably. Where once Arendor had dictated every step, now he fought desperately, defending himself more than attacking, his earlier arrogance shattered. Finally, in a moment of furious desperation, Arendor lunged wildly, aiming a devastating overhead strike. Althea saw it clearly, pivoting sharply away from his blade, countering immediately with a perfectly aimed blow. Her sword struck hard, powered by fierce magic and righteous fury, catching him across his armored shoulder. The impact cracked the enchanted armor, sending it splintering and shattering across the ground. The paladin fell heavily to one knee, stunned and breathless, his blade slipping from weakened fingers to clatter uselessly upon the stones. Silence engulfed the battlefield as Althea stepped forward swiftly, placing her blade inches from Arendor's throat. Her breathing came heavily, her entire body trembling from the immense strain of battle, yet her gaze remained unyielding, fierce with victory and defiance. Arendor glared up at her, eyes filled with hatred and humiliation. "End it!" he rasped bitterly, pride broken yet defiance lingering stubbornly. "Grant me the death of a warrior." Althea stared coldly down at him, feeling a rush of anger and contempt fill her heart. Yet even in victory, she refused to become the cruel mirror of the Empire's brutality. Instead, she lowered her blade, deliberately stepping closer, forcing him to look up directly into her eyes. "No," she said clearly, voice ringing firmly across the silent battlefield. "You deserve no honor, no warrior's death. You came here believing yourself invincible, that your cruelty would break us. Now you will learn what it means to be humbled. She reached down, swiftly pulling away his remaining armor piece by piece, leaving him exposed and stripped of his enchantments. His sword, once a symbol of terrifying power, she took from the ground, holding it up briefly for all to see before casting it dismissively aside. "Go!" she ordered harshly, gesturing sharply away from Veletria, her voice clear enough for every soldier watching to hear. "Return to your masters, paladin, disgraced and powerless. Tell them clearly, Veletria does not bow." Arendor rose slowly, his arrogance now replaced entirely by wounded pride and barely suppressed rage. Yet he dared not defy her again. Unarmed and stripped of his magical armor, he stumbled away slowly, footsteps heavy with humiliation, forced to walk past his own stunned soldiers who watched silently in disbelief. Althea remained standing defiantly, sword still held ready, posture unbroken despite exhaustion beginning to creep into her limbs. As Arendor retreated, his soldiers shifted uncomfortably, their discipline momentarily fractured by confusion and shock. She stared defiantly until the paladin disappeared from view, the echo of her words still ringing clearly through the tense air. Slowly, carefully, Althea turned toward her people, the light around her fading gently. She lifted her blade triumphantly, feeling the eyes of her soldiers upon her, their quiet awe and pride a powerful affirmation of their shared strength. They erupted suddenly into cheering, voices mingling together into a powerful chorus of hope and defiance. She felt relief rush through her chest even as her exhaustion finally took hold, threatening to drop her to the ground. But Althea held herself upright through sheer force of will, silently acknowledging the cost she had paid. Her magic was exposed now, and she knew clearly the Empire would return in even greater force. Yet in this moment, standing victorious before her people, she allowed herself to feel hope. They had turned the tide today, and perhaps, just perhaps, they could endure what came next, no matter how daunting. As the gates slowly swung shut, sealing Veletria once more, the surge of adrenaline faded sharply from Althea's limbs. Her legs trembled slightly beneath her, and she reached out instinctively, steadying herself against the cold, rough stone of the gatehouse wall. Fatigue washed over her in a powerful wave, threatening to pull her downward into darkness. Strong hands grasped her gently, lifting and steadying her before she could fall. She blinked rapidly, vision clearing to find several of her knights gathered protectively around her, their expressions filled with concern and quiet admiration. They held her upright with firm but gentle support, silently acknowledging the price of her victory. "Lady Althea," a young knight spoke softly, his eyes wide with respect, "let us help you inside. You must rest." She nodded faintly, grateful for the support even as she fought against the overwhelming wave of exhaustion, but resting now felt impossible, despite how desperately her body yearned for it. Her thoughts raced chaotically, torn between pride in her triumph and anxiety over what it might cost her people in the future. Her hidden power had been her final shield, her secret weapon against the Empire's brutality. Now exposed, there would be no turning back. She took a shaky breath, forcing composure back into her voice. "I cannot rest yet," she said quietly, her tone gentle but firm. "There is much still to be done. We must strengthen our defenses immediately." The knights exchanged uneasy glances but nodded obediently. They guided her carefully toward the inner courtyard, the gathered soldiers parting respectfully before her, their eyes fixed upon her with a mixture of awe and gratitude. She felt the weight of their gaze as sharply as the weight of her own responsibilities. Their lives, their hopes, their very survival now rested firmly upon her shoulders. Her revelation of paladin magic had changed everything, placing her at the heart of this conflict. Inside the castle walls, servants hurried to meet her, their expressions anxious and relieved. Althea was gently eased onto a simple wooden bench, her limbs heavy with fatigue. She accepted a cup of cool water gratefully, sipping slowly as she gathered herself. Around her, knights and commanders waited expectantly, watching her with careful concern. She felt the eyes of her people pressing upon her, each gaze silently pleading for assurance, for certainty in an uncertain future. Althea squared her shoulders deliberately, drawing upon the same quiet strength that had carried her through the duel. Her voice, when she spoke, carried clearly, firm yet gentle enough to reassure those around her. "Double the guard on every watchtower," she instructed decisively. "Strengthen the gates and repair the damage swiftly. The Empire will return, and when they do, we must be ready. Send scouts in all directions, warn them to remain vigilant for any sign of Imperial reinforcements. We cannot afford complacency." The knights around her nodded swiftly, their resolve clear and immediate, reassured by the clarity and authority of her orders. She paused briefly, the weight of responsibility pressing painfully within her chest, as she considered her next words carefully. "And ensure word of our stand today spreads quickly," she continued, voice softening slightly. "Let our allies and our enemies alike know clearly. Veletria does not bow easily." A brief silence settled over those gathered, her words resonating deeply. Then, with swift nods and murmured affirmations, they hurried off to their duties, strengthened visibly by her determination. Yet Althea felt little relief herself, knowing clearly the full gravity of what she had done. By revealing her hidden magic, she had transformed herself from leader to target. The Empire would now hunt her relentlessly, seeking to crush this unexpected resistance swiftly and decisively. She closed her eyes briefly, leaning back heavily against the stone wall behind her. Exhaustion clawed at the edges of her consciousness, threatening to drag her down into darkness. Yet beneath it, a deeper worry lingered. Her secret had been exposed before both friend and foe, her private shield stripped away, leaving her vulnerable, exposed, burdened as never before. Yet Althea knew she could not dwell upon regret or uncertainty. Too many lives depended upon her strength now. Too many hopes had been placed upon her shoulders. Slowly, deliberately, she rose again, her legs trembling slightly but steady enough. The knights watched her carefully, clearly ready to catch her should she falter again, their loyalty unmistakable and deeply comforting. She met their gazes steadily, silently grateful for their steadfastness. "There is no time to lose," she reminded them softly, her voice unwavering. "Every moment counts now. Every stone replaced, every defense strengthened, each act matters. The Empire will return, stronger and angrier than before, and when they do, we must be ready." The knights nodded solemnly, their faces set in firm resolve, quickly moving to carry out her commands. Althea watched them scatter purposefully across the courtyard, strengthened once again by their quiet courage, their unwavering trust. She straightened her posture deliberately, drawing upon every ounce of inner strength she possessed. Yet even as her determination hardened, she could not ignore the heavy ache within her heart, the knowledge of what this revelation would cost her. Althea had spent years hiding her power, guarding it carefully, understanding clearly the danger its revelation would bring. Now she had willingly shattered that protection, exchanging secrecy for defiance. The consequences, she knew, would soon follow. But despite the dread, Althea allowed herself to feel hope, a fragile but undeniable warmth glowing softly within her chest. Today she had faced down the Empire's cruelty openly, defying it clearly and decisively. Her people now had a rallying point, a source of inspiration and renewed courage. She would shoulder whatever burdens came next, enduring the Empire's wrath if it meant protecting the people she loved. She took a slow, steadying breath, turning her gaze upward toward the battlements, where her soldiers now worked tirelessly to fortify their home. Each stone repaired, each weapon sharpened, each defender standing watch with renewed resolve, determined to show their defiance. A silent declaration that Veletria would fight on, no matter how desperate the odds. And though she knew clearly the fight ahead would test them all in ways they had yet to imagine, Althea stood tall, embracing the heavy responsibilities she had chosen to bear. She would see them through the storm, no matter what it cost her personally. The Empire had forced her hand today, but in doing so, it had also revealed something powerful. Hope, courage, and strength unyielding, alive and thriving within the hearts of Veletria's defenders. Deep within Valen's dimly lit workshop, Cassius bent feverishly over the sprawling collection of ancient notes and diagrams. Exhaustion gnawed at the edges of his consciousness, whispering softly that he should rest, but urgency pushed him onward, relentless and unforgiving. His hands trembled slightly from fatigue as he carefully rearranged pages, trying to decipher the intricate, obscure meanings hidden within Valen's meticulous scribblings. Beside him, Soren worked in quiet solidarity, the young apprentice's eyes heavy yet resolute as he carefully sorted through scrolls and parchments. The workshop around them was cloaked in shadow, illuminated only by the gentle flicker of candles, their wax pooling slowly around the brass holders. Neither Cassius nor Soren spoke often, their silence broken only by the rustle of turning pages and the soft scratching of notes being hastily scribbled in margins. A sudden urgent knock broke the stillness, startling Cassius from his intense concentration. He looked up sharply as the door swung open to reveal a breathless messenger, his face flushed and eyes wide with excitement. "Lady Althea has defeated the Imperial Paladin," the messenger announced swiftly, voice filled with awe and exhilaration. She faced him directly at the gates, stripped him of his armor, and sent him fleeing. "The Empire's forces have withdrawn!" Cassius stared at the young messenger in stunned disbelief, heart leaping within his chest. A surge of admiration and gratitude filled him, mingling sharply with his own guilt over the losses already endured. Soren's eyes widened beside him, the boy's face illuminated briefly by newfound hope. "Thank you," Cassius managed softly, voice thick with emotion. "Tell Lady Althea we will honor her bravery by finishing our work as swiftly as possible." The messenger nodded swiftly, disappearing back into the hallway, the sound of hurried footsteps echoing faintly behind him. Cassius closed his eyes briefly, taking a deep, shaky breath as the weight of Althea's courage settled upon him. She had risked everything openly, boldly confronting the Empire's cruelty. Now the burden lay squarely upon him. He must ensure her bravery had not been in vain. Soren shifted slightly, breaking the silence softly. "Lady Althea fought her battle out there," he murmured gently. "And we must fight ours in here." Cassius nodded slowly, feeling a wave of quiet gratitude toward the young apprentice. Soren's calm presence, his unwavering faith, provided steady reassurance in moments of doubt. He drew strength from the boy's resilience, straightening his shoulders once more as he turned his attention back to Valen's notes. His mind sharper, clearer now. Hours passed quietly, their shared determination driving away weariness, focusing their thoughts into precise, careful analysis. Cassius felt himself drawn deeper into the layers of Valen's intricate diagrams, chasing elusive patterns, obscure connections that hovered just beyond reach. Each page seemed filled with subtle clues, small hints hidden carefully among elaborate formulas and ancient symbols, each discovery tantalizing yet incomplete. Then, abruptly, Cassius's fingers stilled, his eyes catching something previously unnoticed. Tiny markings woven delicately into the margins of Valen's papers, carefully disguised among complex sketches and annotations. He leaned forward intently, pulse quickening as he traced the delicate script carefully with trembling fingertips. "Soren," Cassius breathed softly, barely daring to believe what he'd found. "Come here, look at this." Soren leaned close immediately, his gaze following Cassius's fingers across the subtle lines, eyes widening in understanding. "It's a cipher," the apprentice murmured excitedly. "An ancient pattern embedded within the diagrams." "Yes," Cassius whispered, heart pounding in anticipation, excitement surging within him like a wave. Valen hid something vital here, a critical truth concealed within his own notes. He quickly retrieved a clean parchment, carefully transferring the intricate cipher, each stroke deliberate and precise, hands steadier now, as hope flared brightly within him. Though the meaning of the cipher was not yet fully clear, the significance was unmistakable. Valen had left them something far greater than mere theoretical speculation. He had buried within these pages an ancient knowledge, a secret so powerful it might finally offer them the strength to challenge the Empire directly. Cassius straightened slowly, eyes still fixed upon the newly copied cipher, feeling an overwhelming sense of relief and gratitude toward Valen. The artificer had trusted them to complete his work, to decipher his final, most important secret. Now, Cassius realized clearly, that trust had not been misplaced. "We found it," Soren breathed softly, eyes shining with quiet wonder. "The key we've been looking for all this time." Cassius nodded slowly, carefully gathering Valen's notes, placing the cipher prominently on top. "We have indeed," he replied, voice firm yet gentle, filled now with newfound resolve. "This changes everything." He lifted his gaze, staring briefly at the closed door to the workshop, thinking of Althea's sacrifice at the gates. Her courage had bought them precious time, and now he had something tangible to show for it. Yet even as relief coursed through him, he felt a heavy urgency pressing down upon him. The Empire would return swiftly, and when they did, this cipher needed to be understood fully, its secret unlocked, or everything Althea had accomplished today would be for naught. He turned back to Soren, determination hardening into quiet resolve. "We still have much work to do," he said, voice gentle but unyielding. "Althea's bravery gave us a moment, but it's up to us now to ensure it was worth the cost." Soren nodded resolutely, already reaching for another stack of pages, ready to plunge once more into the depths of research. Cassius drew a deep breath, steadying himself as he picked up his own notes, heart beating with renewed urgency and determination. They would unlock Valen's final secret, no matter how elusive, no matter how daunting. Together, within these quiet walls, they would wage their own silent war, fighting to uncover the ancient truth that could save them all. And though the path forward was uncertain and fraught with peril, Cassius felt a powerful sense of hope, undeniable and unyielding, as he bent once more to his task.